Hello, everyone. My name is Abdul Zari, real estate advisor in Metro Vancouver. I'd like to welcome you to the show. Today, we have a very special guest. He is a very highly skilled inspector, a home inspector, a good friend of mine. He's very detail oriented, he's professional, and has helped a lot of my past clients with their home buying process. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Saeed Noori. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Abdul. Appreciate the kind words.
Absolutely. Said, let's start from the beginning. Tell us how you started into this business, what got you into the home inspection world, and how did you start your own business?
That's a good question. It takes me back about 5 to 6 years when I first started. My initial interest was in real estate. I actually wanted to be a builder.
Oh, wow.
And then a while ago, I helped my family with a real estate transaction. And not knowing anything, I come across a home inspector. Beginning, I didn't even know what a home inspector was. And when I hired one for the property, I was kind of watching what he was doing and I was intrigued. And I was like, I've never heard of a home inspector before. And he's like, yeah, this is a great career. I've been a home inspector for about 30, 40 years. I'm retiring. I think you should do it if you love real estate and you want to be a builder. It's a good stepping stone. So he told me how to become a home inspector. So I did the certification, did the courses, and basically about 2 years later, a little before COVID, I started my own company, Foxhound Inspections. So, and here we are today.
What a progress! What a journey! It's been awesome, eh?
Yeah, it's tough, right? A lot of ups and downs. It's similar to being a realtor. You got to get out there and grind, build your clientele. Nobody wants to hire a 20-something-year-old, so you got to prove yourself out there. Be as good as you can be. Build those relationships. Showcase your work out there, social media, all that stuff. So it's been a grind. So I like it though.
That's good. That's good. Now, many buyers, especially first-time buyers, they walk into a property, into the showing, thinking that they know exactly what they're looking for. However, as a home inspector, what is something that you always find that perhaps they don't really find?
That's a good question. I mean, most of my buyers, when they do their showings, they're not really looking at the things we're looking for. They're really looking at the floor plan, looking at their living room. They're picturing themselves living in that home where the couch is going to be. They're not spending all that time in the utility room looking at the electrical panel, the furnace, the hot water tank, going through the attic and crawl space. So we're really like a second pair of eyes that go into detail in places where you normally wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And we have different tools to help us inspect a little better. Often when you're not carrying a moisture meter, thermal imaging camera, and we do things like that. So we have a standardized process for all homes. That's why, as you said, detail oriented. And these are things that you don't even look for when you're literally looking at a home. So,
and they're so important. All those things you mentioned, people don't really see that at the first glance. You really need those devices, those tools, and your expertise. That's a good point. Now, what are some of the biggest misconceptions with a home inspection? I hear that a lot with buyers. Maybe they don't need one. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I'm not sure of the exact stat, but I believe 2/3 of homes in BC typically get a home inspection. That typically means, 20 to 30% or so don't get a home inspection. That was prevalent when there was subject-free offers. People were going in, buying blind because, they were missing out on deals. So they wanted to go subject-free. But a lot of people realize being a homeowner, it's like having a part-time or even a full-time job. There's a lot of components, especially if it's like a detached home.
Right.
So there's plumbing, electrical, HVAC, foundation, roof, attic, crawl space, appliances, windows. There's so many things that go inside a home inspection. There's actually multiple misconceptions for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the biggest one that I'm finding in the past year and a half is that brand new construction doesn't need inspections, when in fact I would say they definitely do. And just because of how we're building nowadays, and I'm not, blaming builders or anything like that, just a timeline that they're set. A lot of times, sometimes they cut corners and things like that. And it's up to our job as home inspectors to find out the issues before they move into the home. So
it's a good point. A lot of people that buy brand new pre-sales, they go in, they say it's covered under warranty. A home inspection is not really necessary. Do you recommend them doing it perhaps at a later date, so then before that 1 year mark, the builder can come in and correct the deficiencies, or right at the beginning?
That's a good question. So I would recommend getting a home inspection prior to possession, as quickly as you can when you put that offer in. And then another home inspection 11 months down the line. That's the 11-month warranty inspection. The reason is when we're at a home, we're there for a limited amount of time, 2, 3, 4 hours. We do our best to encompass everything. But there are things that you will learn about the home after living in it during a whole year. You go through the different seasons.
Right.
You might notice some rooms get colder than others. You might notice weird issues with the electrical. And then after things have aged and settled for a bit in that year timeline, that's when we can come in and do a second inspection and really make sure everything gets properly addressed. So you can send it off to the builder and they can complete all the repairs that's needed. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Now let's talk about back to resale properties because that's the majority, I believe, of home inspections. Let's talk about when a report comes in. You do the inspection and then the potential buyers come in. You do a good thorough walkthrough. A report's generated. I really like the reports. They're nice and easy to read, and you have it's color coded and minor, major, moderate deficiencies and so on. So usually as a realtor, we tell buyers that you have three options with the deficiencies with the inspection report. The first one is either repair or replace whatever item it is, or try to ask for a credit from the seller, or just purchase it as is. Because depending on the market conditions, sometimes you really don't have too much negotiation room. But those are typically the three things that we look at. What about you? What do you think is something that the buyer should focus on rather than every detail, inspection or a deficiency that comes out?
That's a good question. The thing I like to say is education is my top priority.
Right.
So I'm going to give you a list of the deficiencies that I find during the inspection. Really, after that report is published, then you can sit down with yourself and see what the next course of action is. Regardless if it's fixed or credited, it's still something that the homeowner needs to know, right? So even starting out from the exterior, how old is the roof? What's the life expectancy of the roof? Do I need to do any repairs? Is there any foundation issues? And then you're going inside. And so if you don't know these things, you can, a lot of first-time home buyers, I'm finding this, is that when they go in, they're a little overwhelmed by the amount of information. But a lot of times I like to dumb it down, kind of. Eli 5, I say, explain like I'm 5. So I basically say it in very easy terms so they can understand. It's just basically saying that in older homes, things, we call it wear and tear and maintenance items.
Right.
Things do happen. It's like having a car, right? You need an oil change or else the car is going to break down.
Exactly.
So we give them that list, and then really it's up to them and their realtor to see what the next course of action is. But we feel at peace of mind when they have that list, so they know they can strategize and they can basically budget or plan what they're going to do with those repairs. So
it's a good point. And some things cannot be found during the inspection. They can be found in the strata documents.
Yeah.
So, I've had experience where we'd identify some potential issues down the road and we've asked for credit from the seller from the strata documents. So it's not always just in the inspection. There's always ways to try to find these issues and try to address them with the seller to get the best, deal for your buyer. So that's a good point. Now tell us, I think a lot of viewers are wondering, some horror stories. Tell us a little bit about some horror stories that you've, come across throughout your career.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of stories, basically. I'll do one recently. This was actually it wasn't much of a horror story, but this was an interesting find that I saw. It was a brand new townhome. And typically I usually find cosmetic deficiencies with these, nothing too major. I went into the master bedroom and I noticed that in the middle of the floor, there's like these two horizontal lines in the carpet. I was like, this is a little interesting. So I took my foot and I kind of stepped on it. I noticed it like dipped like half an inch below. The whole subfloor dipped out.
Wow.
So whoever the framing or architecture was kind of messed up. So basically when you're walking on that floor, you notice not only the floor dips, but it slopes away. It's causing the walls to bend a little.
Right.
So these are things that you find in a new build where some people were like, oh, I did not know things like this happen. But like it does happen. That's the thing. And another horror story I had, this was recently in North Vancouver. This is one of those landlords that try to fit as many people as they could into one home.
Oh.
I enter the bedroom. To my surprise, I see the bed on the left-hand side. I see the sink on the right-hand side. There's no separation in the bathroom. The toilet is there. It's not correctly walled off, so there's actually a gap between the ceiling and the top of the toilet.
Oh my goodness.
So if you're doing your business, you're in the same bedroom as there, and then the shower's next to it with no ventilation. So, and the room is just filled with black mold. So those are the things sometimes you see that's more of a horror where you're like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Kind of explains the Vancouver housing problem in a nutshell, but that was one of the horror stories that I saw. So
that's crazy. How do you sleep at night?
I mean, you just see it and, you do your job and you go to the next one, right? So not every home is like that. So you just gotta, it's the scope of your work, right? So sometimes you come across things like that. It's just detail it down, see what you see, tell the clients what it is.
Yeah,
Every problem does have a solution, but obviously some solutions cost a little more money, right? So
that's right.
yeah,
That's amazing, man.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit. What do you love most about your job? What gets you motivated every day? You wake up. What's the drive?
Oh, good question. I would say when a client comes in, they're making the biggest investment of their whole life, right? A home is the biggest purchase they're gonna put. They're gonna put their blood, sweat, and tears, everything that they've saved up, that down payment plus that mortgage. They're gonna be living in that home. So I feel great and just more accomplished. I'm going in there helping them with that transaction. And, I'm going through their home. I'm going through the place where they never would go, the roof, the attic, the crawl space. I'm giving them a full summarized summary of their home and how the components have aged. And so they get a good understanding of their home and kind of helping them understand what a home entails and what they need to be good stewards of their home. So that's really what motivates me getting up every day and doing my job.
I have to agree. I'm at the same. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's the biggest purchase, so we want to make sure that they find something suitable and nothing breaking down.
Yeah.
They walk in, they take possession, and then all of a sudden they have all these issues to deal
Yeah.
with. So that's how we sleep well at night,
Exactly.
making sure that we do find something suitable for the clients.
For sure.
Now, what is the challenge that you face on a day-to-day basis? What's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of my job, I would say, is just the different levels of understanding of a home between the clients. So sometimes you go into a person, you go to a home from like the 1980s and you're like, oh, the plumbing is poly B. And they're like, what's poly B? And you have to start from scratch and explaining everything towards them.
Right.
And you're basically sort of quarterbacking on the realtor and you're basically managing emotions and expectations, right? So my job is to be objective and not subjective. I see what I basically, if I see an issue, I see what it is. This is a problem. This is what can cause, and this is a solution. I don't go further to tell them they should buy a property or not. But there are certain instances where, emotions do get involved and you're sort of trying to regulate those emotions and trying to come up with a solution for the clients. Sometimes, homes have huge issues. Like sometimes you see a home that needs to redo their whole drainage. And to their surprise, drainage is like the biggest thing in a home and they don't really think about it when you're like, oh, what's the rough cost? So it's like, well, 40 to 50,000 to do. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know it was like that. And then you're kind of educating them along the way. So there are difficulties sometimes. And when you have clients, other difficulties include, the understanding of, I like to say past performance is not an indication of future performance. So when we're there at an inspection, we test everything. We take photos of it as well. So if I'm testing the furnace, for example, I have a thermal imaging camera. I go to the supply registers and take photos of each one. It's in that report.
Right.
But if the furnace is 40 years old, 2-3 months down the line, it may stop working, right? So that's the thing too, is to actually tell them that, to say, hey, these components are older, so they may break down. And sometimes they think, oh, it's going to be okay. But 2 months down the line, they call in panic saying, hey, my furnace is broken, right? So, and you got to say like, hey, it was a standard efficiency furnace, it's past life expectancy. But then that's what I pride myself in, is I want to keep an open line of communication. So whenever they do have an issue, I come up with a solution. So I have a list of contractors, for example, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and that I can send them their way. And they're great with my clients, so they'll be able to assist them if they need help. So
it's amazing how related our professions is. We have to not only educate clients, we have to deal with emotions. Try to understand the whole holistic picture and guide the clients. So it's I can really resonate with you, and I appreciate that. Now, if someone is, what is one piece of advice you have for a buyer who is going through the subject removal period, and then they decide, what, I don't want to do a home inspection. Let's just skip it. It's just, it is cost a few $100s, but at the same time, maybe the house looks fine. Everything has been kept well.
Yeah.
What is your recommendation?
That's a tough one because I'm not involved in that one. I hope that they have some contractor friends. It's worth it to bring, if you don't know a contractor, then you can bring in a plumber, bring in someone who does plumbing and HVAC.
Yeah.
Typically, if you tell them, hey, just do a general walkthrough of the home, they can tell you a lot, right? So they tell you the plumbing, they tell you any major leaks. Moisture is the biggest issue of the home.
Right.
So they're typically decent at finding those issues. So even if it's like a roofing leak, they'll be able to say, there's like a stain on your ceiling, your roof's a little older, it's probably due for replacement. They go into your hot water tank, they check that as well. They check underneath the sink. So that's a decent alternative. And if you can't do that, then I would suggest going with your realtor, spending a good 4 hours inside that home and looking top to bottom, right? And there, I can make a whole video about what to look for.
Yeah.
But just go around the home, every nook and cranny. Just make sure everything is working. There's not much you can do about it, but just visually, if it's okay, at least, then you can tell. Like, for example, if you go into a basement and you see like the baseboards are all warped, there's some staining there, then you know there's some moisture getting into the home, and that's a huge issue.
That's true.
And that you should see in the showing, and that may be like a thing for you to walk away from that deal. Or if you're driving towards the home, you're looking at the roof is glistening, so you can see the fiberglass and the shingles, you know the roof's due for replacement.
Yeah.
Or if the home is on a slope and then you go inside the home, you notice some slope floors that has some structural foundation. There's small little things that you can do to find some issues, but ultimately it's not going to be as good as getting a home inspection. So
what I'm hearing is you need a home inspection done.
yes, you can.
Because to be honest, average buyer will not pay that close attention. Sometimes they'll miss it, and if they miss something significant, you know, it can be really costly down the road, especially if they're first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
So having said that, thank you very much for your time. This was very valuable. I hope the viewers have also, you know, learned a lot from this. And everyone watching should note your name down and your company. Where can they find you if they need a home inspection? Yeah,
so my name is Saeed Noori. My company is Foxhound Inspections. You can Google me. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I upload pretty recently, so you can check out my shorts and my reels. I like to post informative information there. Feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram if you have any home-related inquiries. You can go on my website to email me or book me directly. So thank you.
Thank you, Saeed. I really appreciate your time. I hope you had a great time on the show as well.
It was amazing. We should do this again.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much
very much.
Thank you.